Hello and welcome, young spirits and wise souls, to our nightly ritual of wonder and dreams. As the world outside grows hushed and the shadows lengthen, we gather here in the warm glow of storytelling. Let your body relax, sinking deeper into your bed with each breath. Feel the gentle weight of the blanket, like a protective spell against the night. Our story, Goodnight Garden, awaits like a glowing ember, ready to ignite your dreams and warm your heart. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, little Lily stood at the edge of her family's garden, her hazel eyes wide with wonder. The day's warmth was fading, replaced by the cool evening air that carried the sweet scent of flowers and rich earth. Lily loved the garden, with its colorful blooms, buzzing insects, and the constant whisper of leaves in the breeze. "Grandpa," Lily said, tugging on her grandfather's sleeve, "does the garden go to sleep like we do?" Her grandfather, a retired botanist with a lifetime of love for growing things, smiled down at her, his eyes twinkling behind his glasses. "Well, Lily, the garden doesn't sleep exactly like we do, but it does have its own special way of saying goodnight. Would you like to hear about it?" Lily nodded eagerly, her pigtails bobbing with excitement. "All right then," her grandfather said, taking her small hand in his weathered one. "Let's watch the garden say goodnight together." As they walked along the winding path, the last rays of sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating dappled patterns on the ground. Lily's grandfather began to speak in a soft, soothing voice. "You see, Lily, as day turns to night, the garden begins to whisper its good nights to all the plants and creatures that call it home. It starts with the smallest beings first." Lily leaned forward, straining her ears to hear the garden's whispers. "Down in the soil," her grandfather continued, crouching to point at the ground. "The tiny microorganisms that have been busy all day breaking down organic matter start to slow their activity. They settle into the dark, moist earth, taking a break from their important work." Lily imagined the microscopic creatures snuggling into tiny soil beds, and she giggled at the thought. "Next," her grandfather said as they moved on, "the garden says goodnight to the insects. The bees, who've spent the day pollinating flowers, return to their hives. They'll huddle together for warmth through the night." As if on cue, a bumblebee buzzed past them, heading towards a cluster of hollyhocks where its nest was hidden. "The butterflies find safe spots to rest, often on the underside of leaves," he added, gently turning over a large leaf to reveal a peacefully resting swallowtail butterfly. Its vibrant wings were folded up, the insect almost invisible against the green background. As they walked, the shadows grew longer, and the air became filled with new sounds. The chirping of crickets, the occasional hoot of an owl, and the rustle of small animals in the underbrush. "And now," her grandfather continued, his voice low and rhythmic, "as the night grows deeper, the garden says goodnight to the flowers. Many flowers close their petals, protecting their delicate parts from the cool night air and dew." They stopped by a patch of beautiful evening primrose, whose yellow blooms were just beginning to open. "But not all flowers sleep at night," he explained. "Some, like these evening primrose, are just waking up. They bloom at night to attract night-flying moths for pollination." Lily watched in awe as the primrose slowly unfurled its petals, releasing a sweet fragrance into the evening air. As they continued their walk, Lily noticed how different the garden looked and felt as night approached. The vibrant colors of day were fading into softer, muted tones. Shadows played among the plants, creating mysterious shapes and hiding places. "What about the vegetables, Grandpa?" Lily asked, remembering the neat rows of plants in the kitchen garden. "Ah, the vegetables," her grandfather said with a smile. "They settle down for the night too. The leaves of plants, like lettuce and spinach, might droop a little, conserving energy. Tomato plants continue to ripen their fruit overnight, using the energy they stored during the day. They passed by the herb garden, and her grandfather ran his hand gently over a lavender plant, releasing its calming scent. Many herbs release their oils in the evening, filling the air with their fragrance. It's like they're saying goodnight, with a sweet-smelling lullaby. Lily breathed in deeply, enjoying the mix of herbal scents. As the light faded further, Lily began to feel sleepy herself. She yawned, but fought to keep her eyes open, not wanting to miss any of the garden's bedtime routine. "Grandpa," she asked through another yawn, "what about the trees? How do they say goodnight?" Her grandfather smiled, clearly pleased with Lily's curiosity. "Trees have a very special nighttime routine, my dear. During the day, they've been busy making food through photosynthesis. At night, they focus on growing instead." Lily's eyes widened in surprise. "They grow at night?" "That's right," he nodded. "Trees grow mostly at night, and in the early morning hours. They use the sugar they made during the day to build new cells. So in a way, nighttime for trees is like dinner time for us." Lily giggled at the thought of trees having dinner while she slept. As they walked beneath the spreading branches of an old oak tree, her grandfather continued, "Trees also breathe differently at night. During the day, they take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. But at night, this process reverses." "So they're breathing like us at night?" Lily asked. "In a way, yes," her grandfather agreed. "It's all part of the wonderful cycle of life in the garden." They paused by a small pond, its surface like a mirror reflecting the darkening sky. "And let's not forget the aquatic plants," he said softly. "Water lilies often close their flowers and sink beneath the surface at night, rising again with the morning sun." Lily watched as a water lily slowly closed its petals and began to submerge, as if tucking itself in for the night. As the night deepened, Lily and her grandfather found a bench to sit on, surrounded by the gentle nighttime sounds of the garden. Fireflies began to emerge, their tiny lights blinking on and off like earthbound stars. "The garden has its own special nightlife," her grandfather said, his voice blending with the symphony of crickets and rustling leaves. "While some plants and creatures rest, others come alive, creating a beautiful balance in our little ecosystem." Lily nodded sleepily, her imagination filled with images of flowers closing their petals like eyelids, trees stretching their branches towards the stars, and night-blooming flowers unfurling to greet the moon. "But what about the seeds, Grandpa?" she asked, fighting to keep her eyes open. "How does the garden say goodnight to them?" Her grandfather smiled, clearly impressed by Lily's thoughtful question. "Ah, the seeds. They're like the garden's dreams, Lily. Tucked safely in the soil, they rest and wait for the right conditions to sprout. Some seeds need the cooler nighttime temperatures to break their dormancy. So in a way, night is when some seeds begin to wake up and start their journey towards becoming plants." Lily closed her eyes, imagining tiny seeds nestled in the earth, dreaming of the plants they would become. In her mind, she could almost hear their whispered hopes of sunlight and rain. As the night wore on, Lily and her grandfather sat in comfortable silence, listening to the nocturnal symphony of the garden. The air was filled with a medley of soft sounds. The gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze, the quiet trickle of water in the nearby stream, the occasional scurrying of a small... "Grandpa," Lily said after a while, her voice thick with sleepiness, "I think I can hear the garden saying goodnight." Her grandfather smiled and pulled her close. "What does it sound like, sweetheart?" Lily was quiet for a moment, concentrating hard. "It sounds like a big, gentle lullaby, like when Mom sings to me before bed, but softer and with lots of different voices. It's peaceful and makes all the plants and animals feel safe and loved." Her grandfather's eyes glistened with emotion in the moonlight. "That's beautiful, Lily. I think you've understood the garden's goodnight perfectly." they sat there, embraced by the night and the soothing presence of nature, Lily's grandfather began to hum softly. It was a tune that seemed to blend seamlessly with the sounds around them, creating a perfect garden lullaby. Lily's eyelids grew heavier, and she leaned against her grandfather, feeling safe and content. As she drifted off to sleep, she imagined all the garden residents settling down for the night. The flowers closing their petals, the bees snuggling in their hives, the vegetables storing energy for tomorrow's growth, and the seeds dreaming of their future as beautiful plants. In her dreams, Lily wandered through a magical version of the garden. She shrunk to the size of a ladybug, riding on flower petals as they closed for the night. She helped fireflies light their lanterns and tucked in sleepy caterpillars. She danced with moonflowers as they bloomed and sailed across the pond on a lily pad boat. The garden cradled her in its leafy embrace, whispering secrets of growth, renewal, and the endless cycle of life. As the night wore on, a gentle mist began to rise from the ground, wrapping around the bases of plants and trees. Dewdrops formed on leaves and grass, each one a tiny mirror reflecting the starry sky above. In the pond, frogs began their nightly chorus, their croaks joining the symphony of crickets and rustling leaves. On the bench, Lily slept peacefully in her grandfather's arms, her dreams filled with the wonders of the garden. Her grandfather gazed at the star-filled sky above, marveling at nature's ability to inspire such wonder and imagination in his granddaughter. As the first light of dawn began to tinge the eastern sky, Lily stirred in her sleep. Her grandfather looked down at her, smiling at the peaceful expression on her face. "Lily," he whispered gently, "it's time to wake up. The garden is saying good morning." Lily's eyes fluttered open, and she looked around in momentary confusion before remembering where she was. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and then gasped in delight at the sight before her. The sun was just peeking over the horizon, its rays catching the dewdrops and turning them into a million tiny rainbows. The garden, which had been relatively quiet through the night, now seemed to come alive with renewed energy. Birds began their morning chorus, their songs echoing through the air. Flowers that had closed for the night were slowly unfurling their petals, reaching for the first light of day. "Look, Grandpa," Lily exclaimed, pointing at a nearby rose bush where the buds were beginning to open. "The garden's waking up." Her grandfather nodded, smiling. "That's right, sweetheart. Just like us, the garden has its own way of greeting the new day." As they watched, the golden light of the rising sun spread across the garden, chasing away the last shadows of night. Bees emerged from their hives, ready to begin another day of pollination. Butterflies that had rested through the night stretched their wings, preparing for flight. "Grandpa," Lily said, her voice filled with awe, "can we say good morning to the garden?" Her grandfather smiled and nodded. "Of course we can. Why don't you go ahead?" Lily stood up on the bench, took a deep breath, and called out, "Good morning, garden. Thank you for letting me see you say goodnight. I hope all the plants and animals had wonderful dreams." As if in response, a gentle breeze rustled through the trees, showering them with dewdrops that sparkled in the morning light. Lily giggled, imagining that the garden was giving her a refreshing good morning splash. Her grandfather stood up and took her hand. "Come on, Lily, let's go have some breakfast. We can come back later to tend to the plants and see how they've grown overnight." As they walked along the path towards the house, Lily took one last look at the awakening garden. Every leaf and flower seemed to pulse with life and energy, full of promise for the new day ahead. Lily smiled, feeling like she now shared a special secret with the garden, the knowledge of how it said good night and good morning to all its wonderful inhabitants. From that day on, whenever Lily visited the garden, whether during the bright daylight hours or in the quiet of evening, she always made sure to wish the plants and creatures a good night or a good morning. And as she grew older, she never forgot the magic of that night when she learned about the garden's bedtime routine. It instilled in her a lifelong love and respect for nature and all its wonders, a gift as precious and enduring as the garden itself. And so, as we end our tale, we too bid goodnight to the garden, to its colorful flowers and sturdy trees, to its busy insects and hidden seeds, to all its visible and invisible marvels. May it inspire us in our dreams and greet us with beauty in the morning, forever a source of wonder and renewal in our lives. Good night, garden, until we meet again.